Are you struggling to make ends meet, or are you creating billion-dollar projects that will leave a lasting positive impact on humanity? Today, I'm honored and I'm also pleased to be interviewing Mark Nelson. He has his PhD. He's also one of the 8 biospherians who locked themselves in a closed environment in the biosphere too for 2 years. They had to create their own food, create their own air, water, all of that, make sure it wasn't full of too much CO2, which became a problem at one point. And he's also the author of Irrationals in the Hope of the Impossible, The Origins of Biosphere 2 at Synergia Ranch in the 70s. This is a brand new book. You definitely want to read it. But today he's going to talk about those origins and how they brought in the seed capital. And by the way, this is not the only project they did. They own a boutique hotel in London and gallery. They have a rainforest in Puerto Rico. He has the Eden in Iraq wastewater project. Mark Nelson and his partnerships have been around for half a century and they have a lot to teach us. And by the way, if we were to recreate Biosphere today, it would cost over $1 billion. All right, so we'll get started momentarily. Remember, you can always share this video conference with your friends. It's free. Just give them a link or tell them to go to youtube.com/Natalie Pace and subscribe here so that you're not going to miss anything, because this is what we do. Financial freedom, financial empowerment, financial education, sustainability, and we feature experts from around the world in these areas. Okay, Mark, it's so nice to see you. Welcome back from Denmark. I just wanted to start by asking you, 8 people sealed themselves in a closed environment for 2 years, right? So let's talk a little bit about that before we talk about how we got to the biosphere too. What was that experience like? I know you were in charge of probably one of the most important things there. So tell us a little bit about that experience of living there for 2 years. I mean, most of us can't even imagine anything close to that.
Well, I want to start with living inside Biosphere 2 for 2 years was sensational. It was a deep step into our past, our present, and our future. And for me, I've been kind of a tree hugger and trying to, do my eco part for 20 years before Biosphere 2. It was a step out of my chattery roof brain into my body, really understanding what living with a living world like that was like. And it was profound. It was beyond mindful, it was cellular. We
Yeah.
understood, and we understood that our job was to guide and help and support this very young, actively growing biosphere. It was growing up while we were learning how to be biospherians.
Right. And
So
are guardians of it, essentially, right?
yeah. And I actually learned not that long ago. I sent a message with our primitive pre-internet email to the mission control saying, if you're short a crew member for the next closure experiment, count me in. It was that good. Everything made sense. And it was so exciting because, we were learning so many new things and seeing this unprecedented world develop.
Now, I mean, I know that it's not the definitive documentary, but people can look at Spaceship Earth as, they can get a little bit of a sense of what you guys went through. But tell us, what were some of the challenges of, I mean, this closed environment? I mean, you had to manage air, water, food, the whole 9 yards. Most of us could, we'd die if we had to grow our own food, much less, making sure our air is clean and that our water was potable.
And keeping all the miles and miles of machinery and pipes and technical systems. You make a human designed world. Nature does a lot for us that we take for granted. And I think that's actually one of the lessons of Biosphere 2. How much money, how much effort, how many brilliant engineers and ecologists to make this tiny, tiny, 3 acre bit of a living world and we're kind of we are starting to wake up to this amazing inheritance. Hey, we're all what's the word? No, I'm going to stumble into un-PC things, but you talk about a gift from your ancestors. Well, we are locked into the whole story of life on Earth. It is the greatest, amazing, wondrous story, which is continuing and has no end.
And
I will say, because I kind of dodged it going up, one of the hardest things was being physically isolated with 8 other people. Let us not underestimate that. Because
yeah,
we went in as friends, we're friends again, but that is a unnatural situation. The
yeah,
closest I ever got to it is we started a couple of Institute of Ecotechnics consulted projects in the outback of Australia, and feeling like you've fallen off the end of the world, you know,
yeah,
that's Australia. Anyway, Biosphere 2, although we could pick up the phone or meet friends or colleagues at the windows, two-way radios, but still, that was a challenge. It was heaven and it was hell. But we all worked together because, everyone in there, and I admire every one of my crew members, we were all totally dedicated to making this world as successful, as scientifically fruitful as possible. So what often happens, and we've studied small groups in my institute because we have a research ship, we have far-flung projects. There's something called explorer's cholera. It's when a little habit of somebody, like they chew their rice too many times before little things that drive you absolutely bats. That kind of thing built up. And then there was a power struggle on the outside. And I think people who watch Spaceship Earth, no spoiler alert, get a little glimpse of that because that put another level in all groups. There's going to be cliques, and
yeah.
you come in and you hang out a little bit better with somebody or other. But we never sabotaged Biosphere 2. We worked together flawlessly. And because we were very calorie limited, every time there was a coffee morning or we dipped into our home brewed banana wine or had a feast,
Yeah.
had no time for rancor. We all just partied like we were and we were the best of friends.
Well, the interesting thing, and then I want to go now into the origin story a little bit. Um, and I think you're kind of alluding to it. And part of the reason you call it biosphere too, right? We are all biospherians. The
Right.
lessons that you guys took into this small 3 acre closed environment are applicable to everyday life, not just not just the let's manage our air, let's manage our water, but how we can work with people if we're really thinking about, look, you guys had to work together. If you didn't, you could die. That was really,
Right.
it would be perilous if people weren't doing their part. You know what I mean? All right, so let's
Absolutely.
take it back to Synergia, which is, and this is very much featured in your book, which I highly recommend that everybody check out. I'm gonna flip over to it real quickly so people know where they can get it. It's called Irrationals in Hope of the Impossible, the Origins of Biosphere 2 at Synergia Ranch, that's in Santa Fe in the 70s. So take us back to the origins.
Oh boy. Well, I had graduated from college and I knew I just didn't want to do anything that was on offer. I didn't want to become an A, B, or C, a doctor, a lawyer, a professor, I was looking for something new.
Right.
And, I mean, friends who are more optimistic and, you know, um, positive than I am at times remind me the universe is on your side. So I take no credit for it, but through a chance meeting, I was driving a taxi in New York. That's how far I had fallen in looking for my way. They were headed out to this place, and they had worked with theater with this group, which had started in Haight-Ashbury set up shop. They used to run cafes to make a living, put
Right,
on theater, talk about ecology and new ways of living. Went to Houston and they found probably the crappiest piece of land you could find within, 20 miles of Santa Fe, but it
right,
was inexpensive. And
right.
so when I rocked up in my brother's VW Bug
Yeah,
and said, "What's the program here?" John Allen, our resident visionary, said, "Well, it's pretty simple and it's complex. We do three things here. We work on ecology, we work on enterprise, so we're self-supporting, and as group morale and artistic expression, we do theater. And we do all of these more or less simultaneously." And to me, that was a magic formula because I could see that that could lead to a balanced life, which was what I think I was really seeking.
right,
And, to a kid who grew up in New York, once covered by a forest, went to school in New England, covered by forest pretty much. I'd never seen anything as devastating. And, so we set practical goals. Even though there are 20 or 30 people living here and we're busy building because we need more places for people to both set up enterprises and live,
right,
the goal was simple. Let's take this desertified piece of land that had been overgrazed and, trees had been dynamited out to plow up, all of these really bad things that happen.
right.
Let's turn it into an oasis. And that was a magic formula. And again, I think, the Biosphere 2, we are all held together by a vision of a new way of looking at Earth's biosphere, a new way of experimenting with it. Well, that was kind of a vision everybody could get behind. Let's turn this hellhole of a devastated landscape into an oasis. Who doesn't want to live in an oasis?
Right.
And, since I love history, one of the saddest books I ever read was Deserts Are the Footprints of Human Civilization. So
Wow.
let's reverse that. Let's reverse that. Let's show that, being what we would say now mindful, being good ecological stewards, we can enrich the our surrounds and make a pleasant life for ourselves. The more shade trees, the more fruit trees,
Yeah,
the better life gets. And, and keep the cost of living really low and because there were no neighbors within shouting distance, be raucous, be wild. I mean, that's why I love that title, by the way, is a humorous Sufi definition of a community. A group of irrationals unified in hope of the impossible. And
wow.
I put it, what a better, slogan. I mean, I'll march to a different drummer under that banner. You know, rationality is killing us and killing the planet. I'm not against science. But
Oh,
the
you are a scientist, in fact.
irrational, the best things in life, I'll change the old song. The best things in life are irrational. Love, friendship, beauty, creativity. Yeah.
Now,
Anyway, so it's a wild story that I tried to capture there.
well, I love this too, and I was wanting to kind of pull out some of the success. The what were the qualities that helped you guys to rebuild? I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, we took this desiccated land and we created an oasis. I mean, that's a lot of digging, that's a lot of heat, that's a lot of sweat, that's a lot of close contact, that's not a lot of money coming in. Nobody's getting rich
Right.
off of it. So, what are some of the qualities that helped you guys to endure the hardships and embrace the opportunity and the hope and the vision when things got rough?
Well, I think I've already alluded to, you really need to hold people together. You need to have a shared goal that everyone can unite behind.
Yeah,
But, down to the brass tacks, own the land. And because Santa Fe was not discovered, thank God, in those days,
right.
and the previous owner had burnt down a building here to, get the insurance to invest in a short-lived racetrack. He sold it to us for $50,000, 14 and a half down for 160 acres, a lot of old ranch buildings, two wells, et cetera.
Right.
So, the land, you need to secure the land so you're not paying outrageous rents. And we're always working on how can we lower the cost of living so people like myself who came there knowing nothing practical, absolutely nothing. I mean, I can't exaggerate or overemphasize. And we're open to people who came with skills and people who we lovingly call willing incompetents, but keep that cost of living down and building your own buildings. I mean, we built the Heraclitus out of ferrous cement because if you have 15 to 20 basically volunteers from the Institute and people who want to build a ship, that's the most labor intensive. So we built out of Adobe. So as you mentioned, that meant digging soil, stealing or buying a little bit of sand and straw. And I'm Jewish, and uh, it's one thing if the Pharaoh is making you make the adobe bricks. If you're building your community, I'm building this complex, and there's going to be 10 rooms. There's going to be a pottery, a wood shop, a sales room where we can sell our products so we can support ourselves.
Right.
So, of course, this is $1970. We started out with $30 a month rent and board, $30 a month. Then it got jacked up to $50. So it was incredibly inexpensive because what we were planting and harvesting fruit trees, we were planting gardens and herbs, we were doing all the building and wiring and plumbing ourselves. We attracted a couple of architects into the group who, did some brilliant architecture. We met Bucky Fuller, and Bucky, who is certainly a hero, and we're very delighted that he actually spoke at an IE conference and became a friend. He
Right.
waived his licensing fee when we said, Bucky, we just don't have any money. And we do theater tours. One, theater really is glue, at the lowest level, it's group therapy.
Right.
You leave your personality disorders
Right.
and your conflicts outside the theater, take off your shoes, get into your body, into your voice. So at the lowest level, it's really great for group dynamics. And at the highest level, it's a study of human history and culture. So we mixed in new plays with doing Shakespeare and the ancient Greeks and, et cetera. And it was just such a vibrant life. I set a goal and exercise for myself that periodically I would stop, reflect on, and try to digest what I'm living through and say, is there anything that's more interesting? And if there's anything more interesting, you should, not stay here out of inertia, go and do it.
Right.
And, you know, 54 years later, I've never come up with it'd be the grass is greener and more interesting over there. It's always a challenge because we set ourselves difficult tasks.
Well, I mean, that's the point of it is that you may be based out of Synergy or you just got back from Denmark. You're fundraising to finish a kind of a remodel of Heraclitus. We'll talk about that in a moment. You did the biosphere where you lived for a couple years. You're doing Eden in Iraq. So you have rainforests in Puerto Rico. You have a boutique hotel in London. These are all Synergia Ranch based projects, and I'm sure I'm not mentioning all of them. But one thing you brought up that I want to dive in a little deeper to, and I think this is important for other people to understand too, kind of your optimistic friends. When you start doing something that has a greater meaning than just yourself, that resonates with others, it can be Bucky Fuller. They come in and they want to support it. They
Right.
want to be
Right.
helpful. They don't want to charge you for it. They want to actually see you succeed. I mean, I see that with my Earth Gratitude Project. You guys have contributed to it, and we feel very blessed to be able to interact with you. But I also want to talk a little bit about because Biosphere was an expensive project. A lot of people have quantified that if you were to rebuild that today, it would cost over $1 billion. So when you did it, it wasn't cheap either. And that's going to cost more than $50, launching a
Oh
month.
yeah.
So we know that Ed Bass came in and became a big partner. Now, are you able
Yep.
to, and if you don't want to, no problem, just pass. But like, how did you attract him? When did he enter the picture? Who brought him in and that sort of thing?
Oh yeah, no, I mean Ed's a, fantastic human being. He inherited wealth and he's done so much good with it. It's kind of a funny story. He was trading Navajo rugs and he built a house. He'd studied architecture at Yale where he graduated.
Right,
And we had, among the enterprises we started at Synergia Ranch, I think there must have been 20, almost an enterprise a person. We started a construction firm after we'd built a number of, buildings that didn't leak, no leaky roofs, buildings looked good. We decided to, do that in Santa Fe and try to revive Adobe building, which was under assault, modern techniques.
right.
So he ran into somebody who showed some photographs of the first couple of houses we built in Santa Fe, which were beautiful. And Ed hired our construction firm. He was building at a place near Albuquerque, and I was starting a landscaping. I'd finished my woodwork furniture making enterprise. I was landscaping. I became the landscaper, and we brought a crew down there, and we saved the house from being condemned, and Ed was able to sell it. And then he kind of loved the lifestyle. And so Ed actually, he was not only a financial supporter, and he
Right,
liked, I mean, clearly we needed seed capital. The
right,
ranch was built totally without seed capital and the Heraclitus as well. But our other ventures required some seed capital and then, kind of sweat equity. The and we call ourselves synergists,
yeah,
Synergia Ranch, synergy. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts and unpredictable from it. The synergists would provide the sweat equity and make the project work because they had a financial stake in its success. So Ed, became like the seed capital person.
right,
And I have to say, like Ed was very playful with words. He styled himself an ecopreneur as well as an entrepreneur,
right,
because, we intended Biosphere 2 to make money.
right.
And maybe if it hadn't been so controversial, we would have sold one to Euro Disney. And I mean, in my opinion, the fat lady hasn't sung. There should be Biosphere 3 and 4 and 5 in major universities and major cities as educational and eco-tourist things. And, you know, um, the Eden Project, if any of your
I was gonna
listeners might
say,
have heard
yeah,
of, yeah,
there's a Biosphere 3.
yeah, and Tim Smith says he was totally inspired by Biosphere 2 to do Eden, and Eden's got a great ethos. It's the theme is to demonstrate to people the synergy, the cooperation between people and plants.
Yeah.
And we live in a world where we're starting to wake up, but even simple phrases like that are mostly theoretical to people. And my God, Eden, we could fit all of Biosphere 2 into one of their biomes, the rainforest biome.
Wow, I
So
didn't realize
so
it's that much
so
bigger.
when we started Biosphere 2, we had no idea really uh, how expensive and how long a process. Originally, we were thinking, well, maybe we take over the old tennis courts. We had bought a old conference center then owned by the University of Arizona.
Right.
And then, oh, plastic, even concrete, doesn't make a structure airtight. And then because of a lot of the conferences and the networking and the people that we knew, we had a cadre of really great ecologists and engineers who had to learn how to speak to each other. And so that kind of mushroom, but stating it in dollars kind of understates what we achieved. I'm not surprised. I would think $1 billion might not build a biosphere if you have to go out and do it conventionally. But
Yeah,
because we not only built all kinds of support greenhouses and worked for years designing Biosphere 2, collecting plants around the world, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a whole research and development. And, that could be, I mean, our hope was that we would continue. The Russians wanted to do another biosphere in the Soviet Union. And what I love about the whole biosphere thing is, and Natalie, let's laugh together. 30 years ago, when I was on the phone either saying the word Biosphere 2 or the company behind it was Space Biospheres Ventures, in 3 out of 4 cases, people said, Biosphere, can you spell that for me? They couldn't even spell it. And
Wow.
so, we intended Biosphere 2 to be a very quiet R&D project. And when the first,
Oh boy.
newspaper or magazine pictures, and we had built, as you do at a big project, a beautiful model.
Yeah.
When those people put it out against the landscape, it looked for all the world like we had built it.
Yeah.
And then the most amazing thing happened because I think it touched, you're doing good, you're alluding to it. When you're doing something that's challenging and people, see that you need some mentoring, it's amazing the help you got. The Heraclitus is replete with stories of people we were building in Oakland who came in to teach Engine 101, sailmaking 102, so Biosphere 2 was kind of like that. It attracted the people who really want to innovate. And to an ecologist, it's beyond restoration ecology, like Ian Prance, who was then with New York Botanic Garden, and he became the director of Kew Garden.
Right.
He's like, this is creation. We're going to create an ecosystem from the ground up. So there were challenges, and the ecologists didn't know how to translate and speak the language of engineers and vice versa. So it was so interesting. And you're talking about analogies and applications in the world. I think the world is in its state because engineers don't know ecology. They don't know the total picture
Right.
of what they are making their systems for.
Right.
And ecologists don't know engineering, so they can't quantify. If we had, like every project should have teams of engineers and ecologists working together, that
Absolutely.
would make such a difference.
Yeah, and I mean, and on the smaller scale of not the non-scientific world, I mean, we also talked about what you said about the Eden Project, right? It's sad that we have to say to people, hey, there's a relationship that you can have as an individual with nature, right? I mean,
Right.
so many
Right.
people, what's their nature? Their lawn, and sometimes that's even in a desert, right? Where they're draining the Colorado River to water it. So yeah, I
Right.
mean, these lessons are with all of us. We need to understand more than our job. And a lot of times, people are put into a job in kind of a silo or a vacuum where they're part of a widget and they're not communicating with others. So I completely agree. But I want to jump back now. I want to jump forward. So we kind of talked a little bit about biosphere. We talked a little bit about the origins and how you were successful in attracting everything. I want to move fast forward. I don't want to, spoiler alert, you guys should watch, you should definitely read the book so that you understand all that went on before, during, and after. But what amazes me is that you guys are all back at the ranch. So you're still,
Not all of us.
but a good many of you, right?
Yeah.
John's still
Yeah.
there.
Sure. Well, and the core, and the core group, it's a funny group because we can date. I mean, some people say, well, I'm a latecomer. I came 6 months after, the ranch was bought here in New Mexico. Deborah Snyder, the wonderful publisher of Synergetic Press, she came in 1982. Is she a Johnny come lately? But the thing is that, yeah, there's kind of a core. And, my God, I mean, we're also building alliances with like-minded people in Catalonia, in Argentina, in Brazil. I mean, the thing is that a lot of creative people are working, and somehow, the news is always the bad news, right? But there's a lot of things, and my not joke, that sad thing that people couldn't spell the word biosphere. Now it's kind of people are understanding, they're waking up, and it's at a very fraught moment. So I totally agree with you. The really sad thing is, and people don't realize it, but if they don't really understand that they're a biospherian and the biosphere is their life support system, and my God, We love the biosphere. We're hardwired to love the biosphere, and
Yeah,
including now we can make cities a little greener and more beautiful.
a
But
lot.
human,
Yeah,
yeah,
easily.
but yeah, totally, totally. I am not going to defend modern architecture. The only consoling thing I have is it's not built to last. But this nature separation is the saddest thing in the world, and it's a fantasy. Waking up to the reality, getting out of the fantasy that the environment is, I don't know, now I've taken to calling it, people think of it as the wallpaper of their lives. And even if you're in a New York skyscraper or wherever you are, in a submarine, the air that we're breathing has oxygen because plants have produced it. And that's a miracle that we're the only planet. When Jim Lovelock was trying to figure out, is there going to be life on Mars? He started thinking about life on Earth. And,
How
if you
miraculous
know
it is.
nothing else about planet Earth, the fact that we have 20% free oxygen in our atmosphere tells you that the life machine called the biosphere is working. So often, I can get pretty hokey and down to earth in my talks. I
Yeah,
say, let's stop. Let's stop. And I want you to take 3 deep breaths. And I
yeah,
want you to visualize what is making that air breathable.
that's powerful.
Yeah. And I learned, some years ago that the Japanese, take it as far as, and I think 3/4 of them do it periodically. They go to a natural area, they call it forest bathing.
Yeah,
And, I think that's partly what's driving modern people crazy and not giving them a sense of meaning.
yeah,
Your primary meaning is that you are lucky enough. I mean, the Hindus, oh, nobly born. You're lucky enough. Well, I'm sorry, I do believe in, poetically, I believe in reincarnation. Well, however you got here, you are in a human form. You're part of this vibrant biosphere that has totally transformed the earth. And, so you have a reason for being here and a proud lineage and a splendiferous future when we get our shit together.
absolutely. And speaking of that, let's go into some of your projects because one thing that in the, like in the Earth Gratitude, the reason we wanted to feature you and Deborah and Ecotechnics and all this is that you guys have solutions. I mean, I even tell people, look, they should be reading another one of your books, The Wastewater Gardener, whether you're talking about cities and, a better way to do that, especially small cities. If you are lucky enough to have your own land, you absolutely should be reading The Wastewater Gardener. But I think that even on a smaller scale, people could be doing a minimum of that with the gray water recycling in their lawns and making their lawns native to attract pollinate. So read every one of Mark's books, but I'm going to show you a few of these projects that they have going. And Mark, I'd just like you to just tell us, just, very briefly, a sentence or two about what each of these are. Of course, this is Biosphere 2, and anybody who wants to visit it, it's now run by the University of Arizona. It's down by Tucson. And I strongly recommend you check that out. We talked a lot about that, but tell us a little bit about Eden in Iraq.
Oh, Eden, Iraq, this is this is a wonderful project because the idea was to go into a war-torn area. You know, Everyone knows about the Shiites and the Sunnis and the
Right,
civil war and blah blah blah, and do some effective sewage treatment. Well, our approach that came out of Biosphere 2 inspired me to get graduate degrees. Take wastewater and turn it into flowers and a beautiful public park, irresistible beauty. And meanwhile, you're saving human health because that's the number one killer, especially in the developed world, is sewage that's not properly treated, pollutes drinking water,
right.
and they're sitting on what was once the fourth largest wetland in the world,
Unbelievable.
southern, and it's so symbolic. This is the Fertile Crescent. This is where the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers come down. And, I worked for many years and have so much respect for the Aboriginal culture. This marsh Arab culture is like the Aboriginals, 8,000 years at least, perfect harmony, and the beautiful buildings that kind of defy, it's a hot, arid area. It's kind of an anomaly. It
Wow.
doesn't hardly rain, but those two rivers create the wetlands. They built the same structures that they did in Babylon and Sumeria. It's an amazing culture, and they're reconstituting themselves because of war, and Saddam Hussein drained both rivers. So when I got an opportunity, and the project is led by an amazing woman artist, and it's also a cultural celebration. I mean, I really hate this thing, and it's in our nature, bring art and science and everything together. You
Yes.
know, an artist is a scientist, and a scientist is an artist, and we're all the richer for shooting on both barrels, both brains, whatever you want. So this project is going to take 10 acres of wetland and make a wastewater garden that's going to treat the sewage and turn it into a public park for 10,000 marsh Arabs.
Wow.
And after years of working, we now have an Iraqi Minister of Water Resources who not only has helped build the first part of the system with his own people and machinery,
Right.
when he cut the ribbon, he said, we want them all over Iraq.
Wow.
Great project. We are still looking for strategic partners and donors because it's gonna be very impactful. This kind of system can be done throughout the Middle East.
Sounds good. Let's also show people the Heraclitus because you've mentioned that quite a few times. So here is Heraclitus.
We
Uh,
just
there's different photos that are going to be popping up. There it is.
Yeah, so it's a great synergy itself. Ferrocement, hull and decks, and Chinese junk sails. And this ship is storied. I mean, it went 2 years up the Amazon. It circumnavigated South America, went down to Antarctica, has crossed the tropic world, done 10 years of coral reef research. Now we're rebuilding it. So it's kind of Heraclitus 2.0. We
Right.
hope for decades and decades, a whole new generation of seamen. And it's kind of like all our projects, they're hands-on. This is the excitement of it. First off, it started because we couldn't afford to hire people. But that's the real fun in life is doing it yourself, getting engaged, finding a team
Learning.
of people,
Right.
and a small group of people can build a ship and it sails.
I know that you want money, but is it possible that you could actually use some sweat equity on either one of
Absolutely.
the projects?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we just got a donation from Jotun. We're very appreciative of the paint and sealant. We need crew to, put on the paint and then re-rig it. And, you know, its forthcoming expeditions are going to be in the South and North Atlantic. We might go to Greece. We did some oral history in the Mediterranean. So it's a very exciting ship. It's pretty amazing. I spent 3 months on it, when I was a punk kid, and
Yeah.
I sort of fell in love with it. And I was thinking about spending 6 months of my year on the Heraclitus and 6 months on the land. Life sometimes doesn't takes other directions, but people fall in love with that ship. It is not well, first off, it's black and red,
Yeah.
kind of looks like a pirate ship. It certainly doesn't look like what do they call them now? These mega
Like
yachts.
yachts. Yeah.
And because it looks that way and the people are real on board, it can make contact. When we were in the Amazon doing the ethnobotany, I was so impressed that some of the shamans, some of the plant specialists of these tribes
Yeah.
said, we want to go on the ship, go with you because we want to meet other people and see what they're doing with their
Wow.
plants.
Wow.
It's that kind of a ship.
Well, I want to wrap it up. Let people know if they are interested in donating, if they are interested in becoming part of your, sweat equity, brain trust, that the next iteration of biospherians.
Absolutely. Volunteer. We've got an amazing rainforest project in Puerto Rico that,
Amazing. So how can
yeah,
they
go.
how can they reach you and learn more about these things?
Well, we just revived, we have a new flashy and hopefully more interactive website. So you can go to ecotechnics.edu.
Okay.
There's also, you can go directly to the Heraclitus website. And I know, Natalie, you're going to put these links up for
I am.
people.
Yes.
But whether you go there for a few weeks or you get enamored by the magic of really doing something that's not being done and needs to be done, yeah, we're totally open to volunteers and sharing and learning from our. Sometimes we learn from the people who come.
Yeah. And also the Ed Basses and the Bucky Fullers, and if you are a scientist, I'm sure that they're going to embrace your wisdom as well. Do you have any final words that you want to leave us with about what excites you or what optimism you have about some of these projects or anything at all?
Well, I stole this from a friend, but I'm sure he's happy my using it. I say to people, yeah, it's perilous times. I mean, for sure. We're waking up to being biospherians, to living in a biosphere. We're starting to comprehend it just at a moment of real danger. I mean, and I don't mean to mitigate that, but optimism is a yoga. We don't have time for sitting around and wringing our hands. And you never know. I mean, each person has a genius. And I think one is you will deepen your appreciation for living if you get on the page and actually start to register in your body how much you love the world and how much the world, the biosphere is supporting you. I mean, I love during COVID when people were falling in love with their house plants and the tree that they could see across the window. We need to fall in love with your little piece of the biosphere and understand it's all connected and think big, dream big. So yeah,
Irrationals in the hope of the impossible. Why not?
yes, let's
And
go for the impossible, people.
it's funny, and and then, we're going to sign off. And of course, everybody just know that you can share this. It's absolutely free. There's no opt-in. YouTube.com/. Natalie Pace. Email us at info@Natalie Pace if you're coming back to this a few months later and you need just the link, whatever it is that you need. You're going to find links to all of these projects that Mark talked about and his new book. All of that will be in the description on the YouTube channel as well. But one thing I was recently talking to somebody because there has been this movement of like, if you visualize or if you talk about things or if you use the right words, that's how you can attract great things into your life. And I was like, honestly, I think differently. I think more like every morning I wake up in my meditation and I say, where am I needed? Where can I serve humanity best? And that simple question has given me a life beyond anything I could have ever imagined. There's no chance that I could have, you probably could have never imagined that you would say, I'm sitting here driving my cab, and boy, in a few years, I'm going to be, talking to Bucky Fuller and building
Right,
remodeling a house for Ed Bass. You wouldn't have dreamed that. How could you possibly have dreamed that?
right.
So have
Yeah.
fun, folks, lean in.
Live your Make your own fairy tale your reality tale.
Yeah, and follow your heart, follow your passion. It has a wisdom, kind of
Right.
like the wisdom we were talking about of, you guys going into the theater thing at night. Is it group therapy? Is it an off-site group building thing? Is it art? It's all of these things, right? And it's a chance to live on that other side, a magical side of your brain that gets shut down if all you're doing is, wrote stuff.
All the world's a stage. Bill Shakespeare kind of nailed that one.
He nailed a few of them, didn't he? All right, I'm going to end it here, folks. But again, youtube.com/ Natalie Pace, info@nataliepace.com. This is Dr. Mark Nelson. Get his new book. You can tell us the title because it's a long one.
Irrationals in hope of the impossible.
Yes, and also I strongly recommend The Wastewater Gardener and anything that he has written or talked about.
The
Absolutely.
funniest book your people will read about shit. There, I've said it again. I think I did.
Cursing on our show.
Oh no, that's not cursing. The original title was going to be "Holy Shit."
Oh, there you go.
Holy, holy, holy shit.
Yes.
Been
All right.
really fun talking with you, Natalie.